The first thing I did after waking from the crash was sign the divorce settlement my husband had spent 3 months trying to force me to accept. Not because I had finally forgiven his affair. Because I no longer remembered ever loving him. The neurologist called it severe retrograde amnesia. My language, education, and general knowledge were intact, but 10 years of autobiographical memory had been erased as cleanly as files from a hard drive. My last complete memory was from age 19. I had just moved into a freshman dorm at Boston University. My world had consisted of course registration, club fairs, terrible dining hall coffee, and the intoxicating certainty that my real life was only beginning. Now a tall stranger in a tailored charcoal suit stood at the foot of my hospital bed and told me we had been married for 10 years. He said we had a 5-year-old daughter. His name was Ethan Hayes. He was my husband and the CEO of Firefly Risk Technologies, a Boston fintech company that had gone public 2 years earlier. The divorce agreement lying in my handbag had come from him. Apparently, after Firefly's IPO, Ethan had decided he wanted to leave me and make his relationship with Vanessa Cole official. Vanessa was Firefly's Senior Vice President of Global Strategy. She had graduated from London Business School, joined the company at a critical stage, worked endless nights beside Ethan, and appeared with him at every celebration, investor dinner, and magazine interview. According to Ethan, she deserved better than to be called the woman who had destroyed his marriage. And according to him, the woman I had become was no longer the one he had married. That Claire had left the workforce years ago. She spent her days caring for our daughter, tracking Ethan's schedule, asking when he would come home, and crying when she thought no one could hear her. Claire, when love is gone, it's gone, he had said when he first slid the settlement across the table. The agreement gave me our Back Bay townhouse and $1.5 million. In exchange, I was expected to sell my 15% stake in Firefly at a valuation chosen by Ethan's team and sign a permanent transfer of intellectual property rights. His attorneys had also implied that if I refused, Ethan would argue in family court that I was emotionally unstable, financially dependent, and unfit to provide Lily with a consistent home. The Claire who remembered the last 10 years had refused to sign. Not because the money was too little or the house was not valuable enough. She remembered Ethan running 10 laps around the university track because I had joked that I would only date a man willing to embarrass himself for me. She remembered him standing below my dorm window in the rain, promising he would love me for the rest of his life. She remembered nearly dying when Lily was born and waking to find him on his knees outside the operating room, begging the doctors to save me. She believed 10 years of love could not simply vanish. And she did not want Lily to become another version of me. I had been raised by a single mother. I knew what it felt like to grow up noticing other families before you were old enough to understand why yours was different. I knew how early a child learned to say, "It's fine," when it wasn't. So the woman I had been kept delaying the divorce. Until Lily's birthday. Ethan had promised, for once, to spend an entire day with her. The candles had just been lit when his phone rang. Vanessa said something that changed his expression. He grabbed his coat. Lily wrapped both arms around his leg. "Daddy, I haven't made my wish yet." He looked down at her with impatience instead of guilt. "There's a problem with the Europe project. I'll come back later." I followed him to the elevator and asked him to wait 2 minutes. Whatever the crisis was, surely he could stay long enough for his daughter to blow out 5 candles. He pulled his arm from my hand. "Claire, can you stop using Lily to control me? Vanessa is alone with the project team. I'm the only one who can help her." The elevator doors closed between us. Lily stood beside the untouched cake, tears rolling down her cheeks. I forced a smile, bundled her into her coat, and took her to see the lights along the Charles River. On the drive home, a truck crossed the median. I had time to do only one thing. I threw myself over Lily. When I opened my eyes again, I was in a private hospital room staring helplessly at a phone with no buttons. A nurse spent 10 minutes teaching me how to order food. When a McDonald's bag arrived, I held up the burger in wonder. You touch a screen and food appears? Did I sleep into the future? The door opened. A man in a dark gray suit walked in. He was handsome in the polished, distant way of someone used to being obeyed. broad shoulders. Controlled expression. Expensive watch. Then he spoke. Claire, what game are you playing now? I looked up from my fries. Excuse me, sir, who are you? And do people in the future not knock? He stopped so abruptly it was almost funny. The nurse cleared her throat and told me he was my husband. I looked at him, then at myself. That's impossible. Yesterday I was at freshman orientation. How did I wake up married to somebody's angry uncle? The neurologist explained again that I had lost 10 years of personal memory, not my ability to reason. I understood marriage, property, contracts, and the legal meaning of a signature. I was capable of making decisions. The strangest part was that the divorce settlement had been found in my handbag. I read every page. Then I asked the nurse what had happened before the crash. By the time she finished, I was so angry I no longer wanted my fries. Let me understand this. A man abandoned his wife and daughter at a birthday party to meet his mistress, and then they were nearly killed. The nurse did not answer. Her face did. I spent several minutes insulting the man before realizing I was the unfortunate wife. Ethan sat on the sofa with one ankle over his knee, growing more rigid by the second. You truly don't remember me? Why would I want to remember a man who left his wife and child? I studied him suspiciously. At 19, I thought I might date someone like Ryan Miller. He played basketball, volunteered at the student center, and was kind to everyone. Even if that didn't happen, I cannot imagine choosing someone who looks annoyed by basic human emotion. Ethan's jaw tightened. I did not understand why he was offended. He was the one who wanted to leave me. I signed the last page of the agreement and pushed it toward him. Mr. Hayes, please have our attorneys proceed. He stared at my signature for a long time. You're not going to reconsider the property terms or Lily's custody arrangement? My attorney will review the financial terms. As for Lily, I don't know her yet. It would be irresponsible to pretend I'm immediately prepared to care for her alone. I spoke carefully because the child was not a bargaining chip, no matter what either parent wanted. We should follow the doctor's and family attorney's recommendations. Temporary shared care first. Once I know her and understand my life, we can decide where she should primarily live. Ethan looked sharply at me. Before the crash, you said you would give up every dollar before you let me take Lily. That was the Claire who lived the last 10 years. I leaned back and lifted my casted foot. I don't know how she became so desperate. But now that I'm awake, I don't intend to keep picking up something another woman has already taken to the curb. He watched me for several seconds, then took the agreement and tore it in half. We'll discuss it when your memory returns. The doctor just said I am competent to decide. My attorney will draft another agreement. He left before I could throw a pillow at him. I assumed he wanted more favorable financial terms. The next morning, he returned holding the hand of a little girl with 2 ponytails. The moment she saw me, tears filled her eyes. Mommy! She ran to the bed and wrapped her arms around my waist. I froze. How was anyone supposed to process this? In my last memory, I was choosing electives and complaining about a roommate who stole my shampoo. Now a 5-year-old child was calling me Mom. Your name is Lily, right? She looked up, devastated. You really don't remember me? I had never known what to do when people cried, especially adorable small people. I awkwardly wiped her cheeks. Don't cry. We can meet again. She sniffed and solemnly introduced herself. She liked strawberry cake, pink rabbits, bedtime stories, and kindergarten. She could read 2 picture books without help. I told her I was 19, had just started college, loved potato chips, and watched embarrassing romantic dramas. She stared at me, then laughed through her tears. Mommy turned into a college girl. That afternoon we shared apple slices and watched cartoons. Lily told me the old version of me loved her very much, but rarely laughed. You used to cry under the blankets, she whispered. And when Daddy came home, you didn't smile. Something small and sharp pressed against my heart. What had happened to the girl I remembered? The girl who argued in class, danced badly in the dorm hallway, and believed every door in the world was opening for her? How had she become a woman whose own child associated her with quiet tears? When I was discharged, Ethan drove us to a 4-story townhouse in Back Bay. The doctors and family attorneys recommended keeping Lily's routine stable while I recovered, so we would both stay in the house temporarily and share responsibility for her. The place was decorated in warm colors I would have chosen, but it felt more staged than lived in. I asked Ethan where the glasses were. He opened 3 cabinets before finding them. I laughed. "You don't spend much time here, do you?" He did not answer. That night, while he struggled to wash shampoo out of Lily's hair, his phone rang repeatedly. Vanessa flashed across the screen. "Aren't you going to answer?" I asked. "No." It was the first time I heard him speak her name with anything less than certainty. At 10 o'clock, the doorbell rang. Vanessa walked in wearing heels and the expression of a woman who believed the house already belonged to her. She did not remove her shoes. "Where is Ethan?" "Reading Lily a bedtime story." Only then did she look at me. "Claire, how much longer are you going to drag this out? Ethan and I built Firefly into a public company. You stayed home. You got the house and the money. You should be grateful." I had lost my memories, not my intelligence. In that moment, I understood why the woman I had been might have refused to sign. Perhaps she had not been clinging to Ethan. Perhaps she simply could not swallow the humiliation of watching someone stand on her life and call her useless. Ethan came out of Lily's room. Vanessa's eyes filled with tears on command. "You said you would come back after you brought them home. Today is our anniversary. I've been waiting all evening." So the emergency on Lily's birthday had not been a crisis in Europe. It had been their anniversary. I leaned against the sofa as if watching a ridiculous television show. Ethan avoided my gaze. "Claire's condition is unstable. Lily needs her. I'm staying tonight. But you promised you would never live with her again." "Both of you should leave," I said with a yawn. "Take Lily too." "You're interrupting my show." Vanessa glared at me. "Don't pretend you don't care. You think playing hard to get will make Ethan come back." I cannot remember his face from yesterday. How exactly am I seducing him? I smiled helpfully. My neurologist is excellent. I can ask him whether he treats delusions. Her face went white with anger. Ethan escorted her outside and told her quietly to go home. After the door closed, a thought came to me. Why hasn't my mother visited? Ethan stopped with his back to me. The silence lasted too long. A cold feeling spread through my chest. Is she angry with me? "Claire." He turned around, and for the first time I saw hesitation in his eyes. "Your mother died a year ago." The glass slipped from my hand and shattered across the floor. "No." I grabbed my phone and searched frantically for her number. She said when I started college, she would move back to Worcester and grow tomatoes. She promised to visit me every month. The number was disconnected. That was when 10 years became real. Until then, it had felt as if I had missed a long movie and awakened near the end. But the person who loved me most in the world had been gone for an entire year. I cried until I could barely breathe. I kept saying I must have disappointed her, that I had ignored every warning she ever gave me. She had raised me alone. She had told me not to trust promises too quickly, not to marry before I knew myself, not to disappear into someone else's life the way she once had. The woman I became had done all of it. Ethan held me tightly. "It wasn't your fault. She was sick. You did not cause her death." "Did she see me at the end?" He did not answer. I asked again and again. Later, I learned the truth. On the day my mother was dying, I had called Ethan more than a dozen times and begged him to come to the hospital. He told me he was overseas on business and that his flight had been canceled. In reality, he was skiing in Switzerland with Vanessa. I pushed him away, nausea rising in my throat. "Don't touch me." He stood among the broken glass, his face drained of color. The next morning, he brought home cinnamon rolls, my mother's favorite. The smell filled the kitchen. It did not comfort me. "Proceed with the divorce," I said. "After you've recovered." I am clear-minded. You don't have your memory back. That is exactly why I can see you clearly. I looked directly at him. You are not treating me well because you suddenly love me again. You are unsettled because I stopped revolving around you. He neither admitted nor denied it. For the next several days, we lived in an uneasy truce. Ethan came home earlier. He drove Lily to school, bought groceries, attempted dinner, and read bedtime stories with the concentration of a man studying for a professional exam. One night, Lily wrapped her arms around his neck. "Daddy, Mommy always said you were too busy to come home. Are you on vacation now?" Ethan did not answer for a long time. From the hallway, I watched him lower his head. His eyes slowly turned red. I felt no urge to comfort him. One innocent question could not erase 5 years of absence. The next morning, Ethan received a call from Firefly. The voice on the other end was urgent. I caught fragments: European banking partnership, deployment suspended, emergency board meeting. He changed clothes quickly. At the door, he glanced back at me. "I'll have the driver bring lunch. Your company is in crisis and you're worried about my lunch?" His hand paused on the doorknob. "You used to have stomach problems. That was the woman you ignored." After he left, I went into the study looking for a charging cable. A locked drawer caught my attention. The key was hidden beneath the pens in a cup, almost as if someone had wanted it concealed, but still findable. Inside there was no jewelry, no love letter, no evidence of a secret life. There was an old laptop, a stack of yellowed product diagrams, and a black notebook filled with handwritten notes. On the first page were the words, "Firefly Risk Platform, Version 1, Product Architecture by Claire Bennett." I stared at my own name. At 19, I was studying information systems. I knew basic programming, but the architecture in that notebook was far beyond anything I remembered learning. There were models, data rules, security layers, and detailed explanations of how banks could evaluate risk without exposing sensitive customer information. Every page was in my handwriting. The laptop still worked. The password was my mother's birthday. On the desktop was a folder called "Don't Forget Who You Are." Inside was the history of Firefly from formation to IPO. The first business plan listed Ethan Hayes and Claire Bennett as co-founders. The first functional prototype had taken me 3 months to build. Of the company's original $250,000 in seed money, $150,000 came from the sale of my mother's small Worcester house. The other $100,000 came from an inheritance my grandfather had left me before my marriage. During the earliest years, Ethan raised money and chased investors. I built the product, managed the books, answered support calls, and demonstrated the system to clients. Of Firefly's first 37 customers, I had personally signed 21. Then Lily was born. My health deteriorated, and my mother was diagnosed with cancer. Ethan told me the company was finally stable. He said I should step away for a while and care for Lily and my mother. Vanessa, newly returned from Europe, would lead product development until I was ready to come back. I trusted him. After that, my name gradually disappeared. In the company's IPO documentary, Ethan was portrayed as the visionary founder who had gambled everything. Vanessa was introduced as the brilliant strategist who had stood beside him through Firefly's darkest years. I appeared only in the shareholder register, beside the number 15%. Even the Firefly platform itself had been repackaged as a system Vanessa had transformed from concept into reality. My hands shook as I went through the files. The woman I had become was not an unskilled housewife who had lived off her husband. She had surrendered her work, her credit, and her place in the company. She had allowed her name to be erased one document at a time. Eventually, she had surrendered her marriage too. At the bottom of the folder was an unsent email addressed to myself. "Claire, if you finally decide to leave, do not believe them when they say you contributed nothing. You built Firefly's first platform. You kept the company alive through its hardest 3 years. You were not alive because Ethan supported you. They reached this height because they walked on the road you built." The message had been saved the day before the crash. Tears dropped onto the keyboard. The woman who remembered those 10 years had already been preparing to leave. She had not refused the settlement because she could not let Ethan go. She had been gathering evidence and trying to recover what belonged to her. Footsteps sounded outside the study. Ethan had returned early. When he saw the files open on the desk, his expression changed. "How did you get into that computer?" The password was my mother's birthday. I closed the notebook. "Who built the original Firefly platform?" He was silent for a moment. "You did." "Who financed the company?" "We founded it together." Then why did Vanessa stand in my house and tell me Firefly existed because of the two of you? His throat moved. A great deal has happened since then. Vanessa led major upgrades. Upgrading a system does not give her the right to steal its history. I placed an old contract in front of him. It was the original intellectual property licensing agreement executed when Firefly was incorporated. The platform's base architecture and 2 key software rights remained registered to me personally. Firefly had received a 10-year exclusive license. That license would expire in 3 months. Without my renewal, the company would have to stop using crucial modules or rebuild them from the ground up. Ethan stared at the contract as if he had never seen it. Legal told me the rights were transferred before the IPO. Did legal tell you, or did Vanessa? His face hardened. I finally understood the permanent intellectual property transfer buried in the divorce settlement. They did not merely want my shares. They wanted to buy 10 years of my life for a house and $1.5 million. Why was the European partnership suspended? I asked. Ethan looked surprised. The client believes the new version creates data compliance risks. Vanessa says the issue originates in legacy architecture. I laughed once. The legacy architecture operated successfully for 8 years. She changes it, the project fails, and somehow the woman who left the company 7 years ago is responsible. The technical team is investigating. I want the report. It contains confidential company information. I own 15% of the company and the core intellectual property. I met his eyes. Mr. Hayes, you should probably introduce yourself to your wife again. That afternoon, I entered Firefly Risk Technologies as a shareholder for the first time in years. The receptionist stared. In recent media coverage, I was described only as the CEO's estranged stay-at-home wife. The elevator opened, and an older engineer with silver hair hurried toward me. When he saw my face, his eyes filled. Claire. I did not know him. He knew me. It really is you. After 7 years, you finally came back. His name was Martin Shaw, Firefly's first head of engineering. In the early days, while Ethan traveled to meet investors, Martin and I slept in the office and repaired code through the night. After I left, Vanessa's first major organizational change had been to move veteran employees away from core product work. Martin had been assigned to maintenance and denied access to the newest development environment. He handed me an encrypted drive. You came to see me the day before your accident. You said the cross-border data process in the new release was wrong. You asked me to preserve every version log. You said if you didn't contact me the next day, I should give this to an attorney you trusted. A chill moved through me. I had already discovered the problem. You suspected Vanessa disabled the mandatory compliance checks to accelerate the European bank launch. You also believe someone falsified the testing records. The version history on the drive was clear. My old architecture had not caused the failure. Vanessa had deliberately bypassed the compliance gate I designed because the project was running 3 months behind schedule. Worse, someone had applied my dormant digital signature to the testing report, positioning me, the founder who had not worked at Firefly for years, as the eventual target of blame. Vanessa arrived at the boardroom soon afterward. The flash of alarm in her eyes when she saw me seated beside Ethan disappeared almost immediately. Why is a woman who just suffered a traumatic brain injury participating in an emergency board meeting? I placed the licensing agreement on the table. Because the brain-injured woman owns the asset everyone in this room is trying to protect. She skimmed 2 pages and smiled coldly. This is obsolete. Claire transferred those rights before the IPO. Then produced the signed transfer. It's in legal archives. My independent counsel has already reviewed the file. The archive contains a scan with a forged signature and an invalid notarization number. The room went silent. Ethan turned toward her. Vanessa, what is she talking about? She has memory loss, Vanessa said sharply. Her interpretation of old documents cannot guide company decisions. Ethan, remember who stood beside you while this company became public. She disappeared for 7 years, and now she wants to destroy everything by holding us hostage over shares and patents. I did not argue. I connected Martin's drive to the presentation system. The screen showed that the command removing the compliance gate had been issued from Vanessa's administrator account. The test report bearing my digital signature had been finalized on the day my mother died. That night, I had been in a hospital family room saying goodbye. I had not logged into Firefly's systems. Vanessa's face changed. My account could have been compromised. What about the $2.4 million consulting payment? Martin asked. He opened an audit report. The receiving company is registered to your cousin. Your compensation agreement paid a personal bonus for each month the European deployment was completed early. You removed the safeguards for your own bonus and the kickback, not for Firefly. Board members began whispering. Vanessa turned to Ethan. You don't believe me? He stared at the evidence as if he were seeing her for the first time. You are suspended pending an independent investigation. You're suspending me for her? I'm suspending you because of the evidence. Vanessa laughed, tears gathering in her eyes. Now you care about evidence? You were the one who said Claire used Lily and her tears to trap you. You were the one who promised that the moment we got her shares and the permanent transfer, you would divorce her and marry me. She realized too late what she had admitted. No one in the room moved. Ethan's face turned gray. I felt strangely calm. The settlement had never been a spontaneous response to a failed marriage. They had planned to remove me from the company and the marriage at the same time. I looked at Ethan. Do I still need to recover my memories before you're willing to divorce me? His mouth opened, but no sound came out. News of the suspended European banking partnership spread within hours. Firefly's stock fell for 3 consecutive days. The board established a special committee. Vanessa was formally placed on leave, and the evidence was sent to independent auditors, state prosecutors, and the relevant data regulators. I could have terminated Firefly's license immediately. I did not. More than 1,000 employees worked there. They should not lose their jobs because Ethan and Vanessa believed they were entitled to erase me. I offered a 6-month temporary extension under 3 conditions. First, Firefly would publicly correct its founding history and restore my name as co-founder and original product architect in every investor filing and corporate record. Second, Vanessa's release would be removed and subjected to an independent compliance review. Third, Ethan would resign as CEO and the board would appoint an experienced outside executive. When he read my proposal, his eyes were bloodshot from 3 sleepless nights. You want to throw me out of my own company? I want to stop paying for your mistakes. We built Firefly together. That is why I am saving it instead of letting it sink with you. My 15% stake became the deciding vote. The proposal passed. Ethan walked away from the position he had spent 10 years protecting at the cost of nearly everything else. After the meeting, he sat alone in his empty office. A photograph from the IPO celebration hung on the wall. Ethan and Vanessa stood in the center, smiling for the cameras. I was barely visible at the edge, holding a feverish Lily against my chest. When he took the photograph down, he found a sentence written on the back in my handwriting. Firefly is public. Mom is gone. Ethan is no longer mine either. That was when he finally cried. I did not see it. I was at my attorney's office drafting a new settlement. This time there would be no hidden permanent license, no discounted share sale, and no threat disguised as concern for Lily. The Back Bay townhouse would remain Lily's primary home. Marital property would be divided under Massachusetts law. I would retain my shares and intellectual property. Ethan and I would share legal custody, but Lily would live primarily with me and spend scheduled time with him. I did not seek primary residence to punish him. Over the weeks since the crash, I had come to know my daughter again. She crawled into bed when I woke from nightmares and told me not to be afraid. She saved the biggest strawberry for me. At kindergarten, she drew a picture called My 19-Year-Old Mommy and made me a superhero in a Boston University sweatshirt. I had been frightened that motherhood was one more role I no longer knew how to perform. Lily taught me that love did not have to return as a memory. It could begin again through ordinary acts, tying shoelaces, cutting sandwiches, listening to the same story for the 6th time, learning which cry meant pain and which meant exhaustion. Ethan kept the settlement for 3 days without signing. On the 4th evening, he asked me to meet him at the university track. The stadium had been renovated, but the field looked much as it did in the fragments I remembered. He said he had first seen me at a freshman debate tournament. I had worn my hair in a high ponytail and argued with such conviction that my eyes seemed to shine. He spent 6 months trying to win me over. He brought breakfast while I waited in line for registration, stayed with me in the computer lab until sunrise, and once sang badly outside my dorm in the rain. "Claire, I really did love you," he said. The night wind moved across the empty trek. I studied the man who had once been the center of my life and was now almost a stranger. What happened? He looked toward the field. The company grew. I was always working. You asked when I would come home. You asked why I missed Lily's events. You kept asking what was happening between Vanessa and me. I thought you had changed. So you fell in love with a woman who never asked you to be responsible for a home. His head lowered. I thought she understood me. She understood your ambition. I carried the rest of your life. I did not remember our marriage, but the records, messages, photographs, and Lily's small observations had given it a shape. Ethan had treated my sacrifices as background noise. Then, when years of neglect changed me, he used that change as proof that our marriage was no longer worth saving. "The woman you miss now is the 19-year-old version of me," I said. "But the woman you owe an apology to is the Claire you hurt for 10 years. She did not appear from nowhere. Every broken promise, every lie, every night you did not come home helped create the person you claimed you could no longer love. I can change. She is done waiting. You are not her. I am exactly her." I turned to face him. My mind forgot. My body did not. When you stand too close, I tense before I can stop myself. When someone says Vanessa's name, my stomach hurts. When I think about my mother's last day, I cannot breathe. The memories are gone, but the damage is still mine. The final hope left his expression. He signed the settlement. The final divorce hearing took place on a bright morning at Suffolk Probate and Family Court. After the judge approved the agreement, Ethan stood below the courthouse steps and asked, "If you remember everything one day, will you regret this?" I considered the question. "I may grieve it. I will not regret it." "Why?" "Because leaving you was a decision I had already made before the crash." He went still. I forwarded him the unsent email from my laptop. At the end, the other Claire had written, "This time, I do not want to use Lily as a reason to stay. I do not want to wait for him to turn around. I only want to find myself again." Ethan read it with his head bowed. The investigation into Vanessa moved quickly. Evidence supported charges involving forged documents, unlawful processing of customer data, and misappropriation of project funds. Before prosecutors formally announced the case, she waited for me outside Firefly's building. Her hair was disordered. The confidence she had carried into my home was gone. "You won," she said. "I was never competing with you. You had been out of the company for 7 years. Why did you have to come back?" "Because you treated my absence as permission to erase me." Her eyes narrowed. "Ethan still loves me. He regrets losing you only because the accident made you young and interesting again. Then that proves he was never worth keeping." I walked around her toward Lily, who was waiting beside the car with my attorney. Real victory was never making a man who betrayed you fall in love with you again. It was reaching the point where his love no longer determined the value of your life. 6 months later, the Firefly platform passed an independent compliance audit. The European banking contract resumed. Firefly issued a public correction and restored my status as co-founder and original product architect in its investor materials, website, and permanent corporate history. I did not return to compete for the CEO's office. Using the licensing income and my first independent consulting fee, I founded a small data security firm focused on helping women-led startups and growing companies protect their intellectual property. Martin joined me, along with several early Firefly engineers who had grown tired of being treated as replaceable pieces of someone else's legend. The office occupied 2 floors of a renovated brick building in Cambridge. It was not grand, but one wall was made entirely of glass, and every morning sunlight poured across the desks. The name on the door read, Bennett Data Security Lab. Lily often came after school and did her homework in the conference room. She stopped asking why her father did not come home. Every Saturday, Ethan arrived on time to pick her up. After leaving Firefly, He no longer had the authority to interrupt every family promise with an emergency of his own making. Slowly, he learned to plan, to call, and to show up when he said he would. Sometimes he brought cinnamon rolls. Sometimes he stood outside my office longer than necessary. I never invited him in. It was not hatred. Some doors, once closed, did not need to be reopened simply to prove you had healed. A year after the crash, on the anniversary of my mother's death, Lily and I drove to Worcester. My mother smiled from the photograph on her gravestone. I knelt and placed a copy of the first international contract signed under my own name beside the flowers. "Mom, I still don't remember all 10 years," I said. "But I know now that I did not disappoint you." The wind moved through the trees. I lost myself for a while. I let a man become the center of a life that was supposed to belong to me. But I found my way back, and I will raise Lily to know she never has to disappear for someone else. Lily placed a bunch of daisies against the stone. "Grandma, Mommy smiles every day now." For a moment, a memory returned. I was sitting outside my mother's hospital room, older and exhausted, calling Ethan again and again. He did not answer. My mother reached for my hand. "Claire," she whispered, "stop waiting. Your life was never meant to be spent waiting for one person to come home." The memory vanished almost immediately. I did not chase it. Some memories return to help us say goodbye. Others remain gone so we can begin again. I took Lily's hand and walked down the hill. Sunlight broke through the branches and fell across our path. My phone chimed. Ethan had sent a message. "I'll be at Lily's art show on time. Good luck with the new project." I replied, "Thank you," and turned off the screen. 10 years earlier, at 19, I had believed the whole world was opening in front of me. Now the door was there again. This time, I walked through it without looking back.